Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to explore some ways to attack the Caro Kann defense with the white pieces in a really traditional way using a funky rook lift to gain pressure on the king side. I'm also going to spend a little bit of time in the opening because this is my first video on the Caro Kann with you guys, just going over some of the main moves here. I'm just going to turn down the volume a little bit. And so Caro Kann structure is going to be reached. Caro Kann after c6 and d5 for black. This is a very solid structure for black. And I tend to attack this the same way that I attack the French defense, and I like to play the advanced variation. The advanced variation, we're automatically already getting spatial advantage in the center, and we're going to restrict the development of black's pieces. Specifically, his knight now will not be able to jump to f6. And this e5 pawn will be a thorn in his side for the rest of the game. So typically then, what black wants to do in the Caro Kann is get his light squared bishop outside the chain so that he is exerting this pressure here. In a traditional French defense, c5 is played and the bishop stays back here with this pawn on e6, and this light squared bishop is considered bad for black in the French defense unless he takes measures to improve it. And so the Caro Kann, from the standpoint of the light squared bishop, is a slight improvement over the French for black. At least that's what they think. So typically in this position then, what I'm doing is I am trying to get my bishop out to d3 to organize a trade of these two pieces before black can play c5 and then c4. Once black's pawn gets to c4, I can't get my bishop to d3 anymore. The most I can hope for is e2, and my bishop is terribly passive on that square, and I'll have to alter my strategy accordingly. So typically in this situation, black will go ahead and trade. Black usually doesn't play c4 here. He usually will build up pressure on this central pawn. Now we're really resembling a French defense with the queen coming out to b6. Pressure on our b2 pawn here, so our bishop on c1 is stuck at home until we can resolve that. Now, there's a really interesting way that we have to resolve this tension. What we have here now in this situation, our pawn is defended by the knight, and after we take and the bishop takes, we can play b4 with tempo. You can't do this until you get castled. If my king was here and my rook was here, after I come out and attack the bishop, he has a double attack here, and I'm losing the f2 pawn, but this b4 push coming with tempo can be performed after we have castled safely. So there are some really good tricks here in the Caro Kann, and white is considered to be not only maintaining the advantage we started the game with, but also just ahead of that even more. So it's typical developing moves, attacking the queen with tempo. Queen has to move. I opt to overprotect this pawn here and really start building up over here, getting the rook, developing pieces, space on the queen side, attacking the queen again, and here I decide that I just want to trade some knights off the board if I can. And then the plan is to go ahead and swing the queen over to g3. Now we have our lovely little trick of bishop coming over to h6. In order to prevent mate, black would have to push g6, and then we gobble up his rook and we've won the exchange. This tactic becomes much more deadly when we have this pawn on e5, and because otherwise black could just play bishop to f6, and now with our bishop sitting here, he takes. Everything is safe there for black. But he doesn't have this move option, and so already we see this e5 pawn being a thorn in black's side. And now here's where things get really interesting. I already kind of hinted that there's going to be a rook lift in this video to gain an attack on the queen side. So now what we'll see here is a gradual reorganization of the pieces. And now at this point, the rook lift becomes really interesting because I'm essentially giving away bishop takes b4. This move is not that scary for me anymore. What I can even do here is just play queen to h4, and the game is basically over because now the queen is coming in, and it's mate in 3 as long as black doesn't sacrifice any pieces. Now, I missed this in the game. However, we still do get the victory. Bringing the, as soon as I move the rook, I knew he could move the bishop back, but we just start stockpiling here, building things up. And black caves to the pressure. So just to kind of recap the game, this structure against the Caro, this advanced pawn, if you're looking for ways to fight against the Caro Kann, I know that the fantasy variation is one in this position where we keep the pawn here, and instead we play f3. We hope that black takes, and then we take, and then we have a nice strong pawn chain. I'm a big advocate of the advanced Caro Kann because it's also what I play against the French, so I don't have to memorize a lot of lines. In this structure, making sure that we get the bishop to d3 before black can just run the pawn down to c4, because once that pawn gets to c4, we'll not be able to get our bishop to d3, so we're racing to this d3 square. Typical pressure building up. Remember, because we're castled, we can take on c5 and play b4 with tempo. Best move is actually for bishop to go back to f8, and at this point in the game, a4 is actually best. Bishop f4 is also good. Knight to a3, also common, preparing to bring the knight to c2, which we kind of do later in the game, but just wanted to make sure that you guys had these ideas, and that as the French, oh, quick note here too, computer says I should have taken here. Computer says I should take the knight, stacking black's pawns, but don't rush queen to d2, trying to bring an attack and go win the pawn. Computer says after I take and black's pawns are stacked, to go ahead and just slide the rook over to e1, natural developing stuff like we would in the French, and just play solid and positional from there. Black can no longer really castle to the queen side, and we're going to be totally fine here. So that's also an option if you're the type of player that really likes to stack your opponent's pieces or stack your opponent's pawns. This is definitely an option here. Later we can play queen to d2 after we get the knights developed and centralized and the rooks are connected and we've got space, a4, maybe a5. Then later, this is a long-term positional weakness that we can exploit later. So hopefully you guys got a lot out of that, some typical Caro Kann stuff, little rook lift in there, and building up that pressure along the king side, getting the knights off the board, swinging the queen over. I've got triple protection on this pawn now. It's going absolutely nowhere. I've got double protection on this guy. At some point, that rook can come up to e3. I'll have triple protection on that pawn. The bishop can even come back here if it needs to, after it goes to h6 and provokes the weakness. So many options here, and everything just came together nicely. And I really like this game. My opponent at the beginning of this game was rated 1746. I've been rated 1750 before in Blitz. And so I like getting victories against opponents who are 100 points higher than me, and my rating that I'm trying to get back to, I feel like it's a lot more symbolic of good victories as opposed to when your opponent just plays bad moves. So hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you found it useful, like and subscribe. I figured out my microphone issues. You guys should have good sound, and we'll see you on the next one.